Hey, it's your boy Dustin from the Flying Chariots, the Rise podcast, and today, oh shit, you won't believe it. I got one of my good friends here, Joanne Summerscales from the Newsroom, all the way from the UK. Joanna, I haven't seen you in forever. I think it's been like close to 2 years since you've been on our show. So it's like, I feel like there's been a lot of things happen since then.
But when you said it, I think it's about 2 years. I thought, blimey, really? Is all that time gone already?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I was very excited to interview you because I absolutely love Colonel Wendelle Stevens' work, and I am a Billy Meier fan, and I don't think he gets enough credit. I may not agree with everything that I haven't read all the Billy Meier stuff. I will say that, but and I mean, even if I don't agree, I'll find resonance with everything that he's written or said about certain things. I absolutely believe 100% that he's the real deal when it comes to the encounters and the sightings and those photographs and everything. So yeah, I'm absolutely on board. So it was very exciting to get to see those, and you know, how amazing of you to be on the ball and see that material was being auctioned off or something. I can't remember how.
Yes, yeah. We had a storage locker auction about 3 years ago, and I was just lucky to get in it and win two boxes that contained about 200 photographs of photographs that they're from Paul Villa. A lot of famous contactees, Paul Villa to we have Mark Coltrane from Wisconsin, and we have some of the Billy Meier photographs. And I was what luck.
And meant to be, and you appreciate it, and I think that was. I think that was wonderful and really exciting because you don't come across that very much, you know, like a real find, and you know the fact that these boxes were hidden away for so long, and then anyway, I don't know the story of how they came to be out in the world again and up for auction or whatever, but
I can give you a little backstory too. There was his colleague, I forgot his name, because Wendelle I think died about 11 or 12 years ago. And his associate was keeping up his storage locker fees until he died about 3 years ago. Then it was open up to the public. Then it was like they had like a whole long description of like how these came to be, where they are right now. And so I got into this auction. They were just doing it one at a time. And again, when I was showcasing these online and going viral, all his old colleagues, including Michael Horn and others, and Figu just clarified what I had, and it was awesome. Even like I got to talk to Paula Harris, some guy linked me up with her, and we got to talk on the phone for 2 hours with Paula Harris, talking about old stories with Wendelle and JL and Hynek, and her going down to Switzerland too, talking to Billy Meier and what's his name?
Really exciting stuff. I mean, because that's some of the, you know, I'm also a great George Van Tassel fan, you know, rock from the 1950s.
Yes,
I think all of that stuff is an incredible treasure trove, and I mean, there's not that much on the George Van Tassel stuff, you know, like interviews. There's the Scottish interviewer and stuff, and
yes, I love that one.
Anyway, I love it. I kind of, maybe like you, I don't know if you do, but get a sort of sensing as to the validity or veracity of something. And I mean, whatever anybody might say about Wendelle, I absolutely knew that to be a truth. Like I you know, his photographs and the work that he did. And also with, I mean, the George Van Tassel stuff. I met at one of the International UFO Congresses, a wonderful gentleman also passed on now called Robert Short, and he knew Van Tassel and he would go to Giant Rock at times. I mean, how amazing to touch base with those people. I mean, what a treasure that is, you know.
Didn't him and his family live under the rock for a while? Was that? Yeah. And I heard there's another bizarre story before he even got to the rock. Was another guy that was living underneath the rock, and it was really crazy and blew himself up after some like authorities were trying to get him out or something like that.
I
You know,
vaguely
did you hear
vaguely
something
remember it.
about that?
Yeah, I vaguely remember something about that, but I can't bring the details to mind because I have to say I didn't pay that much attention
Sure.
to that. But somebody posted on Facebook the other day a wonderful aerial view, or yeah, it looks like an old, like a newspaper cutting of a big meet, because George Van Tassel used to have these big meets. Go, you get hundreds of
Yes.
people at Giant
Yes.
Rock, and
Hmm.
you know, yeah, I just think I've been around the subject forever. Not necessarily just this life, because I'm not an abductee or a contactee, although, as you said, that I've been doing this for some years. I started sort of publicly in 2011 with the AMASH project. And for those who don't know what AMASH stands for, it's AWMACH, and it stands for Anomalous Mind Management Abductee Contactee Helpline, because I have a number which is out there publicly, ends in 813, that is like a helpline hotline for anybody wanting to contact. Obviously it's a UK number, and so since 2011 I I just began to think, nobody's really speaking. And although it's not that long ago, it's long ago enough compared to what's going on these days, that there wasn't that much going on in the UK for abductees or contactees, especially in the public, as a public platform, one that could be, confidential if people needed it. Because I've spoken to tons of people, on the record, but not for public disclosure, that kind of thing. And which is, they just needed to tell their story. So it's a big story. And, I would sit around my beautiful Colombian friend's kitchen table in London in years past, and be speaking to one of her best friends who would visit and sometimes stay with her, who's the American Peruvian contactee, Sixto Paswells. And she'd be, I've got a bit of old footage, because I wasn't even recording. I wasn't really doing stuff at that time. So it's even amazing that I got the little bit that I've got, but it's quite amusing because with her incredibly strong Spanish accent and Sixto not really comfortable speaking any English at all, because, he could if he wasn't, kind of being held to what he was saying. So it was difficult. But, that guy'd been having experiences since he was 17. And for him, it began telepathically, and actually initially through automatic writing. And I wonder if people know what automatic writing is. Maybe it's a foregone conclusion and people do. It's basically where you have a pen in your hand and you tune into whatever. I've never really been very good at that. I've tried a few times, and I'm just, I think I'm too impatient. But he was actually doing a meditation with I think his mum and his sister at the time. And I don't know why he was writing anything or had a pen in his hand, but he did. And through it came this message from a guy called Oxalc, Oxalc, who was the non-human intelligence that was connecting with him, saying, who he was. I mean, they were astonished because his father was into the paranormal, and even had an association out in Peru at the time, quite a well-known one. But he hadn't had much to do on the ET side. So Oxal told Sixto, this is just an interesting, by the by, and something that I was exposed to very early in my years of finding these different areas of interest. And this being said, if you go into the Chilca Desert, which is not a million miles from Lima, Peru, we'll see you. We'll show ourselves. And so he went with a few friends to the Chilca Desert, to the designated spot, and lo and behold, the crafts arrived. And I can't remember if there's 2 or 3. I would have to ask him again or whatever, but or read the book. He wrote a book his only book in English is called The Invitation. He's written loads of books, but the one in English is called The Invitation, which tells this beginning story as well. And anyway, so he and the guys were so terrified, they legged it. They just ran for their life. And so so that was a bit of a non-starter as a contact. And when he got back and settled himself, and then did another sort of connect session, Oxark said, we can't connect with you, we can't communicate with you when you're in a state of fear or any disruptive emotion, that kind of thing. He said, and so he said, you need to do some meditation, you need to get yourself really calm, and because there's no point in doing it until you're able to. So anyway, that came and went, and he had many connections once he'd got himself together, because I think he was only about 17 at the time. So so
That's
anyway,
amazing.
that sort of thing is what I was exposed to, and I was reading a lot, a lot of spiritual stuff, did a lot of
Mhm.
spiritual development, and then also that came through my regression work. And I even had a couple of guys come to see me who were husbands of my Colombian friends, and one had an experience of having this recurring nightmare where he was seeing this planet, and it got destroyed. I think it got blown, like some nuclear kind of event. And they were greys. He was a grey, and he saw himself as a grey. Now he wasn't really into this at all, but he kept having this nightmare, and the nightmare was that he had to come to Earth to have a life, to have any viable kind of life, and take on the body, a human body.
Mhm.
So I don't know the mechanism. I don't know that story. I don't remember it so long ago. But, pretty everyday, regular folk have extraordinary events happen, along this ooky spooky route of life. And
Yeah.
the other guy who came to see me, um, so if he would get up in the night, this was his thing, which traumatized him. He would, go use the bathroom, go and wash his hands, whatever, and have a bathroom cabinet there in front of him. And if he caught sight of himself, as you might do, not that he was specifically looking at himself, but he would see an alien grey. He wouldn't see his own
Mhm.
reflection. He would see a grey, and that freaked
Oh.
the Jesus out of him.
Oh, yeah. Jesus.
In the middle of the night,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So it was about these two guys coming to terms and becoming at peace with the fact that they'd had other incarnations, and maybe there was an overlay with the
Mm.
guy who was still seeing that image. Maybe that was his main incarnation at one point, and maybe he was the group souls often come in together, don't they? Maybe he was pals with this other guy whose planet blew up. Who knows? I didn't ask that question, but it's fascinating, and
Yes.
I hadn't come across that before. And they were traumatized by it because these people didn't really believe in this sort of thing. And when you're so closed off, we need an open mind. That's the thing. If you can just keep an open mind, it means that if something happens, you don't suffer such a deep shock as could you as you could possibly, and so the trauma is less, because a lot of experiencers do suffer with a form of PTSD, and this is real stuff for them. It's
Yeah.
not to be ignored. The human condition is made up of many layers and many things, and PTSD or trauma, in whatever form it is visited upon a person, or they perceive it in that way, then it's important to be able to deal with it. And how do you deal with it? Mostly we speak to one another. But if you can't speak to one another because you're going to be laughed out of the room, laughed out of your job, laughed out of your marriage, your business, which I've known all of that to happen to
Mm.
people, I mean, that's incredibly traumatic. And you can say, well, we all come in to have the experiences. We've all agreed to do that. And there is something in that too. But also, we need a bit more compassion, because none of us really remember everything in coming down here.
Oh,
And I'll give you a little bit of an aside, which is really interesting. This is ooky spooky. This
okay.
is very interesting. So in the Amash project, and just before I tell you this bit, the Amash project was hacked very badly with porn sites, basically, to the point where it destroyed the website and it had to be deleted. And we were able to mainly save the material, and the ET Newsroom is what it morphed into. It may not be the most fancy name or even the most appropriate name, but you know what? I had to think of it on a dime, and I just, that's what came out of my mouth. So that's why it's not the Amash project anymore, which, I really wish it was, but it had its time. So anyway, I was doing my first conference in 2012 in a place in the East Midlands called Nottingham, in the city of Nottingham. And there was, so I'd been doing interviews by this time, about a year. And a very nice English lady had contacted me and said that she was, her husband was a healer, and she actually was married, lived in Germany. He was a German, she'd moved to Germany. She was from the north of England. And she said, we're really looking forward to seeing you. We're going to come across because I'm going to visit my parents, and then we're going to, time it so we can come to your conference, which is in September. So anyway, she said, but my husband has something he wants to tell you, to share with you. And this is very strange. It's actually in my book. I wrote my autobiography a couple of years ago, really to clear the decks of old books and stuff, but I didn't want to quite delete all the old memories that I'd had, so I put them into a series of short stories, and this is included. And this guy, who is absolutely lovely, tells a story, and I'm just going to paraphrase, and anybody can read it in the autobiography called Vignettes of a Life if they want. But he said to me, I had the weirdest experience. And he said, so this one day, my wife so it was a Sunday, and we were doing our normal thing. She was upstairs watching UFO interviews, and as it happened to be some of mine. And he said, and I was downstairs, not that he knew that at the time, by the way, and he was downstairs reading. And he said, and I never went upstairs. He had that kind of a Germanic, I do things in this way, and this way, and this way. Not in a, I spent a lot of time with Germans in the Philippines, and that was an interesting experience. Very interesting when you're immersed in a cultural meme or bias of a nation, you get to have some very interesting insights into their psychology. And that's what I was seeing with this dear gentleman. And so he said, so I never go upstairs, never. I do my reading. And he said, anyway, this day, he said, I don't know. He said, I was just compelled to go and see my wife. So he said, I went upstairs, and he said, I didn't know what I was going for. And he said, so she has her back to me, and I can see the screen from my perspective when I come in the door. He said, and you're on it. And he said, whoever I was talking about or talking to, it didn't really matter. He said, but the moment I saw you, he said, I knew you. He said, and I felt absolute, he said he was overwhelmed with emotion. And the emotion was of like, oh my God, I can't believe this, it's her, like again. Anyway, so he was so shocked by the emotion because he was moved to tears. And this isn't somebody who's in that kind of nature. Anyway, so to gather himself, and his wife still hadn't realized he was at the door. So, and he didn't say anything at the time. So he just went downstairs, kind of scratching his head, going, "What the heck was that about?" And then he said, "We're sitting having supper," and he said, all of a sudden, he said, I just began sobbing like I've never cried before. And he said, out of my mouth fell these words. He said, oh my God, she's back on Earth. She's made it. I mean, I don't know what I was doing. Obviously, it felt like, well, not obviously, but to me, I, kind of deduce it. Maybe I was in some battle. um, I don't know, but I was alive, and clearly he thought I was dead, or had been killed in some way or other, in some life experience or another. And I said, "Oh my goodness!" And you know, I saw a photograph of him, and I thought, well, I don't feel any resonance, you know, because sometimes when you have past life memories with people, you feel that kinship. You can. It doesn't have to happen, but you can often feel a like a resonance, like, yeah, I have a knowledge of you too. So he said, well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you, because we'd spoken, obviously, by this time at the conference. And I said, well, I can't wait, because sometimes when you are in the environment of the physicality of somebody as opposed to seeing somebody on screen, it's you get a different frequency vibe going on. And anyway, so we met, and there was nothing. I don't mean there was nothing in a horrible way. I mean, it was just like neutral, just like, oh, hello, nice person. And I had fully expected, especially being a regression therapist, that there'd be some nuance, something going on. So look, who knows? Who knows what what we're here to do? For me, it's about communication and the message, and doing it kindly, or if you say lovingly, trying not to be judgmental. We can all do that, can't we? I
Yeah,
speak for myself as
that'd be
well.
nice. Especially here in America lately. Jesus. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
So I
stuff
mean,
going on.
so how wild is that? So um, that was just the beginning of some strange stuff, that my going, if you like, more public. I mean, whilst I say I'm public, and whilst I am known in some areas, I always feel like I'm shadow banned, because my work gets very little attention, very few views, which I find weird,
You
because
know
there's some
what? It's funny
really
you say that. My
interesting.
algorithm too is really up and down. Like there'd be like
Okay.
one video get up to like 500 views, and then there'd be like another video would
I
get
was just
like
looking last
100.
night, and there's like
It's like
200, not even 100 on some, and I thought,
yeah,
wow,
not even 100 sometimes. Yeah.
very important information, I think. Anyway, very useful, very, very helpful. But anyway, be that as it may, we leave these trails of energy, don't we, as we move
Yes.
through life
Yes.
in all of these ways. But so what I'll say about the Amash project was that right at the beginning, so like for the first 18 months stroke 2 years, because I worked with somebody for about 18 months, and then I cut the ties because they were gaslighting me, they
Mm.
were sabotaging things, and I was a little green-eyed Annie, green-eyed here and green-eyed in here. At the time, I'd never experienced gaslighting. I didn't even know what it was, though I'd seen the old film. I didn't appreciate the impact that it had, and so uh, that meant I went solo. So for a year or so, I kind of was finding my way through. But in that 18 months, did a ton of work. Did a ton of work. So this other person would record them, and I'd be doing the interview, and I'd be arranging everything and bringing it all together. And it was absolutely fascinating, because weird stuff started happening. And I think I've mentioned some of it on your show
Mhm.
before, but I don't know if you want me to mention any one of those. I was just talking about one, this major one the other night, and how
There. Go ahead.
utterly strange it was. Well, okay, and you guys, if you've heard this before, just go and get a cup of tea or coffee whilst I'm talking about it,
Well,
and
it's been 2 years since you've been on my show, so I think you're good.
so, but anyway, okay, so look, so this person would do the editing, and now and again I'd bunk down at their house, so I would sleep on their settee, and just a small house on the edge of London. And we'd be working on the edit the following day if we'd done the interview on this day. So this was one of those times, and so it was. I'm a late bird, always a late bird. So it was about 2 a.m. and I'd been reading. And this was in. Let me give you a year. This is 2000. A lot of stuff happened in 2012. I tell you, it's really weird.
Jeez.
Because I started the Amash project January 2000, yes, 2011, and then it's like the engines got warmed up in 2012 because the media in the UK just got a hold of the story, and in 2012 and then going into 13, there was a media company involved, and they did a documentary which aired June 13th, 2013. And that was a bit more of a mockumentary, in my opinion, but it was based on the work that I'd done with Amash, and that, what would come through that. But anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So weird stuff began to happen around me or to me, or whatever. And one of the weird, so as a person, I'm really creative. Had theatre in my background, that kind of stuff, video work. Not to production. Now I'm doing more production, a little bit as far as I'm able, and just getting into the AI stuff. Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
And so at this point, I wasn't doing that stuff. I was doing the creative stuff, and in my life, I hadn't had paranormal experiences, so I wasn't one of those people, and I didn't see ghosts. And really, the people I knew were in my field were deeply spiritual people, people who were interested in self-care. I'd got people who were Reiki masters who would doing massage for health, and I was a regression therapist, amongst other things. I'd done crystal courses, and I'd all kinds of things, and I did workshops on healing and wellness and all that stuff. Anyway, so that was my field. So so the paranormal, whilst I knew it was real, I'd spoken to people who had incredible experiences, but I hadn't experienced it. So in April 2012, I'm bunking down at my ex-mucker's place, and 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm just putting down my book. I'm lying on my right side, facing into a small room, which is full of racks with cameras and stuff. And there's this big settee that I'm sleeping on, and a couple of chairs. So, it might have been 12 by 14, say, the room feet. So it wasn't huge. And at the end of the room, there were slatted vertical blinds, a bit like you see in offices. And there's a street lamp outside, and up to the left hand near the ceiling was a little red light which signaled that the camera was on, that was watching the cars outside, because I think they'd had some problems with people stealing cars. Anyway, so that's what I was aware of. Let me just say that. So not anything special in the environment, right? So I was just under the duvet, and so the room was dark, but because it got the street light out the front there, it was not pitch black. It was probably 80% dark. Let me give you a percentage, something 75-80%.
Okay.
And as I got my eyes, you just kind of open and close, and you're going to half sleep, and I was completely awake, because I was still, I don't fall asleep very easily or quickly. So I was sort of lying there musing about whatever I'd been reading, and just musing, and my vision was just lying in the center of the room, nothing particular. And suddenly, the only way I can describe it is that I would call it a portal, but like a blackness, blacker than the room, materialized. So it looked in the shape of a doorway, about sort of the size of a doorway. And I thought, because it was black on black, you think, hello.
Yeah, right.
Am I imagining things? And I don't think I'd had too much wine that night. And anyway, so I clocked that, and I thought, well, that's freaking weird. What's that? What's going on there? Because it was very solid against the lightness of the blinds. So although they were, it wasn't light, but this was like 100% dark. There was like those blackout dark kind of thing. And then out of it came this man. And this man looked like he was shrink wrapped in black. He was a very wiry, human looking individual. And my sensing was that it was the military. I didn't feel that this was ET at all. It could have been, what do I know? But this guy kind of walked out, and as he was doing so, and he had high set shoulders. I always say this because he was, some of us do, your shoulders are a bit, your neck's not so long and all that. Looked like he got a coat hanger up in it.
Was he skinny?
he was very skinny, but not like ET skinny. He
Sure.
was, so for example, I'm just going to just say this quickly. So Mike Smith, whose story I wrote called 44, based on an ex-soldier's true story,
Oh yeah, I
Flying
remember that. Yep.
Chariots, right?
Hmm.
He was a slight man, and when he was in the army, he was very slight, and then and he was going to train for the special services or something like that, until he injured himself very badly, because they don't just want the big blokes. They sometimes want the very small people who are wiry and extremely capable. Doesn't mean they're any less able to do their job. They may not be able to, pick up a ton of stuff, but they can get through small places, and they
Hmm.
can get into and out of places very fast, maybe faster than a big guy can, right? So he was this small man. Now I'm 5'3". I'd say, I can't remember what I call him in the book, whether I say he's about 5'6". He's certainly, I don't if I've said 5'8", I think he was actually more like 5'6". He could have even been a little bit smaller than that, but shorter. But anyway, so he's, and this shrink wrapped business, so I could see he'd got ears, I could see he'd got a nose, but the shrink wrapped effect, I couldn't see any detail, no
Hmm.
physiological detail at all, except the type of body, i.e. that it was a very slender person. No beer belly, no gut, nothing like that. Just skinny little legs. Well, so that's him, and he walked straight over to me, and to say I was shocked is an understatement. And because I was also had my researcher's head on at the same time, I was thinking, all right. And the thing is, I mean, I was really concerned for my safety, because here I
Oh yeah.
was on my own, and I didn't know whether this guy could harm me. I didn't know whether
Yeah.
he made straight for me. I didn't know whether he was there to hurt me, or do something to me that would compromise my well-being in any way, shape, or form. So the game I played was one of possum.
I would have too.
so, so, um, but the thing is, and I kept my eyes low but open, so they were just, just like looking through your lashes, because I didn't want to I didn't turn my head to look at him, because he came forward. Bearing in mind, I'm lying on my right side on the settee, and he came right over me. I mean, like within 2 feet of my head. And as his system engaged with mine, I had this massive electric shock travel through my body, which was really uncomfortable. And he stayed there over me for moments. I mean, some seconds. I really couldn't tell you if it was 5 or 10 or 20. I really don't know. I don't think it was 20, but, and he stayed there, and I was just still, playing possum. And I just thought, I daren't engage with him in case that puts me in danger if I acknowledge him, consciously or
Sure.
actually. Anyway, so I didn't. And he just, after a while, either he got bored or he thought, oh, we're all right here, she's not going to do anything. He got up, and as he got up, there was a big snap. It was like a clap. But when if you ever, some people do this to remind themselves of things, put an elastic band around their wrist and they snap it. And
Mm-hmm.
when you snap that gives that sting. Well, it was like a snap sting.
Wow.
And he disengaged. I watched him go to, now the end of the settee was right by the doorway to the kitchen. As I said, it's only a small house, and the kitchen door was open. He went straight through, and straight through the kitchen, which was also small, was an even smaller room, which was where the editing was done. And that was the last I saw of him. So that was completely wild. I don't know. So there was no telepathy. There was no messaging me in any way. There was no real menacing of me except by his presence. I mean, he wasn't doing anything to make me feel more fearful.
Mhm.
Um, and and he wasn't giving me any indication of what was going on. And he just left. Now, I was talking about this just recently to someone, because of course it's a long time ago, but the thing is, it's a dimensional event. Now, I think that the military have got this kind of technology where they can create a portable portal or project one and use it to put themselves through physically, but there must be some kind of quantum field, because look, it can't be just a hologram, right? Because he interacted with my field and my field responded, i.e. the electric shock at the beginning, and then this electrical snapback when he left my field, when he disengaged, let's call it, because our auric field goes out a few feet from each one of us, and we don't normally notice it unless we have a particularly loving or unpleasant person in front of us, and then sometimes we feel the vibe, if you like. We all know what that's like. But this was nothing of that, so no communication of any sort. I do believe it was a military testing of some kind. I don't know why they kind of point out myself, and I don't know what they were trying to achieve by that, or maybe they were just testing to see whether I would just remain docile, or whatever. I don't know. You may have some insights yourself. I don't know if you can think, gosh, yeah, that could be about X or Y.
That is pretty mind-blowing. I heard of the shadow beings
No, this
being,
wasn't a shadow being. This was a
things
solid.
more solid.
Oh no, this guy was fit material.
Okay.
I wasn't seeing a ghost and I wasn't seeing a hologram, but it can be. Look, I think if it's a hologram wouldn't engage with your field.
No,
I wouldn't get a
no.
response in my field. I don't think. I mean, what do I know, right? I don't know what the latest technology is like. But when I say he was material, he had a particular gait, the way he walked. It was very human, and
Oh, okay.
I also felt that it was. I just I don't think ET need to do anything like that. I really don't. I
No.
felt like this was part of a military operation that was involved. Now, the interesting thing is, and make of this what you will, when I told my ex-colleague in the morning, I mean, I didn't sleep the rest of the night, right? Or the
Oh,
next
yeah.
early
How
morning.
could you?
I was like, my eyes were like on stilts. It was like, what the F? What then? And, got up, made myself a cup of tea and just like, so, but when he came downstairs and, and I went around, this happened. And they were very kind of nonchalant about it. Like,
Huh.
and walked off. I thought, what? That's weird. And it made me think ever since, I wonder if they had something to do.
Mm.
You know what? It made me curious. And then I said, so he had a lodger. And I said, I'm going to go ask the lodger if he saw or felt anything, because already this guy had said he didn't. And I said, because maybe he did. So I'm standing under a doorway between the stairs and the room, saying I'm going to do this. But as I was standing there, now this is very interesting, and maybe you've got a comment about this, I felt suddenly, and I was seeing this visually internally now, this wasn't an external vision. Let me tell you, that guy that I saw was external. That wasn't in here.
Sure.
Not at
You had
all.
your eyes open, obviously.
But
Yeah.
the eyes were open and I was seeing him materially,
Yeah.
absolutely materially. This next thing I'm telling you was in a vision. As
Okay.
I stood under the doorway, and I don't know why it was the doorway, but I felt like I was under a shower, but this shower was of light and it enveloped me so much, it almost took my breath away. It was beautiful. It was so loving and so benign and protective, and I'm going even goosey telling you about it. And it
Mm.
was like that, whatever happens to me, there'll always be this protection. And that was really essentially it, just this beautiful, I think there might have been one other element to it which escapes me at the moment, but the essential thing was this protective energy just showering over me and through me. It was really beautiful, and it really almost, as I said, took my breath away. And when I went up to ask the lodger if they'd had any experience after telling them of mine, they hadn't. It was just me, so I was the focus. So what's that about? I don't know. I don't
Mm.
know. So that is some of the ooky spooky stuff that I mean, that's a major one that happened. I mean, telling this friend
Mm.
about it again, revisiting it recently, I said I don't know how to, I don't even know how to categorize it, because it's not ghost. It may be. We were trying to find, kind of deduce whether it could be some kind of new holographic technology that allowed a physical manifestation, somehow, that could be projected like a hologram, but it was more than just the light. There was a material aspect of it too. So I don't know. If somebody's listening to this and they know about this technology, please let me know, because
It kind of reminds me of Project Bluebeam, of how
yeah,
that might come about, or maybe this is like the practice of their technology if they were ever to go through with Project Bluebeam. For those who don't know, is that there is this underground government that's has these technology to basically fool us with the gods coming back and basically
with
Jesus and other
holographic energy, and to
yeah,
show
with all
yeah,
the gods around the world though, like Hindu gods to,
yeah, yeah. They can program it to show anything. Let's face
yeah,
it. But this was I don't think, if this was a Project Bluebeam event, then it's Project Bluebeam developed. That's what I would say,
developing. Yeah,
because it was physical. There was a physicality to it, and also it
mhm,
wasn't ET. It may have been military who were working with ET. I wouldn't discount that.
sure.
But there was no ET involved in that event at all, which is just quite interesting. So
And the fact that he came out of a black threshold, you
he
know,
came out of a doorway like a
yeah, like a
portal.
doorway, right? Yeah,
And listen, to just kind of underscore that, I will just share with you one of the people who's on the Eklectia album, which we'll get to talk to in a
yeah.
bit, which is an album featuring musicians who are all experiences of some kind of either ET contact, sighting, paranormal event, etc. Mike Oram, a British guy who has written an excellent book called Does It Rain in Other Dimensions, has been a contactee forever. And he and his partner went to Area 51. I can't remember what year, it might have been 2015. And so they went to Area 51 and had and Little Ailey Inn in Rachel, Nevada. I've been there too.
Hmm.
And and so there was an experience that was had where in a regression, he had to do this through, he knew there was some weird missing time element. So they were staying in a trailer, just I think overnight at Little Alien, which is very famous, and it's well known for, as a UFO hotspot. Of course, it's right on the edge of Area 51. And so, and apparently he had missing time. There was some weird event go on there. So I won't go into all of that because it's quite convoluted. But fast forward to the next day, they're traveling and they think they experienced a flat tire. So this is by Area 51, and they see this military truck come behind them. And he describes it and shows it in his book as well. There is on a platform that is being, I think, driven by the truck, something that looks a little bit like a cannon, and it's mounted on the back of this truck, and he believes it's a portable portal generator,
Hmm.
because later on this was through regression. What he found was that they had indeed been abducted by the military, and his very benign lifelong ET friends kind of rescued him from the military interrogation that was about to begin. And I'd never heard of anybody else. Well, not that I had called this, what I experienced, this portable portal. But when he talked about that event in his life, I thought, oh yeah, I believe that they projected a portal. I don't know how they can do this stuff. I don't know enough about the science of all of that. But these people have a lot of credibility, like Mike Oram, that I mentioned, and many others who've had experiences, not necessarily with the portal business, but Sixto has, for example. He calls them Zendras with an X, Zendras, and the Mission Rama came out of his work, which has become quite a global phenomenon, and basically it's a very spiritual outfit, that one. But I think when there's a more nefarious, self-serving interest like military, I don't think that you have such a benign, positive interaction necessarily. That seems to be kind of a bit of the way it goes. So, anyway, just fascinating. Again, very, very interesting. So, yeah, there's lots of things that came by the Amash desk, if you like, especially in those earlier days. And it's quite interesting too, because another thing that really came across my desk that I hadn't been aware of before, and you might have heard of or not, were TIs, targeted individuals. And you could say, well, an abductee is a targeted individual, and yeah, you could say that. But this isn't targeted by ETs, this is targeted by military and intelligence generally.
Is this with the gang stalking?
Yeah,
Is that part of it?
all of that. I was getting a few people, and again, because these folks had nowhere else to go and park this stuff and talk about it without being ridiculed or whatever. And gang stalking. One of the abductees, a lady called Joanne Summerscales, she was Greek. We got an interview in one of the old Amash Project files with her as well. She talked about TIs being part of her life experience. This not TIs, her being a TI, that she was gang stalked, and the disruption that it causes and the mental health issues that it creates on purpose. I don't know what government. It's clearly a government intelligence agency thing. It's still ongoing. I mean, it's ongoing all the time.
Yeah, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
I don't know what criteria you have to meet to become a victim of that. And I first became aware of it, and then I read about it, and I read a book called Satellite Terrorism in the USA. And it's a book by Dr. John Hall. I mean, you can get this book today. And Dr. John Hall was an anesthetist, and he went to work, it might have been Texas. Anyway, you'll have to look up the story fully yourselves. But basically, he was working with us in a small medical practice, and a husband and wife team, and maybe I don't know how many others. But anyway, he noticed that his boss, that the team that he joined, was off having affairs left, right, and centre, and he, I don't know whether he had a word with him or the wife. I think it was him, and was just saying, gosh, that's not really very, very good. And anyway, whatever came of that. But whatever did come of it was that he suddenly found himself being gang stalked in the most, it was like an onslaught. And what he found was that if you have enough money, so this is a private individual doing this, but if you've got contacts and have enough money, you can use satellite downtime and focus whatever frequencies and stuff and target your target. So your victim. So it's a very interesting book, a bit scary for those who are interested.
Was that more like the government going off and doing this, or is it more like independent people finding ways of doing this?
That guy in the book? Oh,
yeah.
I don't know what's happened to me. Oh my, hang on.
Sorry.
Yeah. That was obviously an independent. Oh, the light's very bright.
Okay.
Oof, wow. Yes, I'll talk.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I have met one.
So that's a whole lot of subjects that.
Yeah, no, because I met one other guy who's claimed who has been gang stalked, and I was always wondering, is it really the government or is it really extraterrestrials? Because I was always thinking, like, what benefit does the government have besides testing out their technology that they're having? Or why would you have your American people suffer when you could do this to other countries? I don't know. Like, yeah, I always wonder, like, what's
from what I've seen. Look,
the reasoning?
ET doesn't really need to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, or just like,
Nobody would
or
do that.
maybe, well,
This is a very,
but
I think it's very human orientated. I'm just
sure,
going to turn this light around. Excuse me a minute, just down a little bit. It's
yeah.
blinding me. I think that's a bit better.
No, I just find it. Where's the reasoning, more or
Well,
less, unless you're really
I,
trying to have somebody commit
I
suicide
read,
over this.
yes, a lot of people do commit suicide. They do, they
Hmm.
do. And it, and you know, one guy's case I read about, he'd been in the Navy, and he was gay. Not that
Mm,
that's anything, but who cares, right? But
right.
and I don't know if he fell foul of some protocols or whatever it was, but I remember reading just briefly about his situation, and you know, a lot of this is to do with microwave radiation
Mm,
that they use. So people, you know, start heating up and having burns and stuff, or they use voice to skull, they call it V2K technology to get you to hear voices, and so you get labeled as schizophrenic when in fact it is actual material audiology going on through instrumentation, through, you know, your phone, your computer, whatever being tapped, that kind of thing. And
mm,
it tends to have you know, there's nothing benign about it, let's say that right off the bat. I've never I mean, I think this young guy, this guy, I think he left the Navy, I can't remember how many years he did, but he felt it was I don't know, you know, somebody took again him being gay. uh, you know, why is this such a why is, you know, it's such a commonplace thing, why would anybody do that? But if you get somebody who's in charge of this equipment and they think, yeah, I fancy, you know, making this guy suffer for a while, you know, who knows what or
hmm.
why. But you know, many cases I kind of read about, and there isn't, nobody, it's not really known in the public arena, like in the mainstream arena. I don't know where it's really spoken of much, but so these people end up suffering in silence. There's I don't know, it's a website or a Facebook site called Targeted Cures, something like that, which I, you know, look into now and again just to keep abreast of it, because it's a really nefarious, shocking thing that, you know, humans. I mean, humans do awful things to other humans just for the, you know, psychotic pleasure of it. You know, there's
Sure.
that element
There's
in
psycho people
humanity.
out there,
So
right?
yeah, um, but what, you know, when Dr. John Hall spoke about his event and all he had done to bring on this fury of this guy's you know, wrath, was to comment about his affairs not being really okay, you know, because he thought the wife was a nice person.
Hmm.
So you know, whatever. But you know, he because he was, but they ended up doing a lot of terrible things to him. And if any, and I'm not going to talk about any of those now, but as I said, if anybody wants to read the book, it's Dr. John Hall, and
Yeah,
it is Satellite Terrorism in the US or USA.
yeah, it's interesting
I mean,
because there's a lot of claims.
it's
It's a
unbelievable.
weird
I mean,
phenomenon.
yeah, well, it's a human generated psyops, you know, to brainwash, you know, mind control people, and to drive them crazy, and to
Sure,
make other people, and you know, people lose their homes, their relatives, their whatever, because if you imagine that your body is affected by these ways, or your mind is constantly picking up conversations, and often these conversations are very derogatory about the person. You know, you're a piece of whatever, you look like whatever, go kill yourself.
sure.
You
And I
know,
was thinking, would this be in the same realms of like the Mandela effect? This is kind of like testing the people. What can they
no,
remember?
no,
Taking, making
no,
sure it doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, no, the Mandela effect is that sense of, say like Nelson Mandela died on this date,
Sure,
but other people remember him dying on another date, and there seems to
sure.
be a big consensus. So that, oh, I don't know what's going on. Sorry,
You're right.
saying my audio is going, but it's not my audio that's going on. Anyway, oh, it's done it again. I'm just gonna dial that down a bit. Sorry about that.
No, you're right.
Anyway, there we go. I've got off track a bit, but it's very interesting because that's what came across my desk, if you like, at the beginning of the Amash project. And, it just gives voice to these people, or gives them. I mean, there wasn't much I could do with them. I wasn't really focusing on them. It's such a dark area.
Mhm.
It's heartbreaking what happens to these folks, and they just seem to be ordinary people. They, nobody special, let's say. And I'm not saying it can't happen to people who are special. I mean, have special jobs or whatever. But it seems to
I
be,
think it happens to celebrities, if not regular
yes,
stalkers.
I'm sure.
You know what I'm saying? Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, I am sure as well. But and then there were some really interesting people, and they would call me and say, I'm just going to say this before my wife comes back, or I'm going to say this once my son's out, and I don't want to speak to you again. I just want to get it off my chest this once.
Whoa.
And this lady, she was 85, right? And she called me up in Norwich in
Uh-huh.
England, and she said, just whilst my sons are out, she said, I just have to tell you this, tell somebody. And she said, but you can't ever, say my name or who, anything. I said, don't worry, I'm not, but I'm sure she's long gone by now, but this was back in 2000, probably 11. And she said, so she'd been having incurrences from reptilians. And she said that, and at 85, she said this reptilian came into my room. Well, I think she was in her later years. It might not have been in her 85th year, but anyway, came into her room and said, "You are mine," like that. And she goes, "Oh no, I'm not." She said, "I belong to Jesus." And with that, he kind of just disappeared. And it seems to be, this is interesting for all you abductees out there that are having a hard time, or anybody else in any other, kind of paranormal scenario. The Jesus Christ vibration, whatever you think of, and I'm not talking about in the religious sense, like church sense. If that works for you, that's great. But I'm just talking just the notion of Jesus. If you give, just hold that energy of your perception of that, Jesus or Christ, that seems to have a really deleterious effect on these negative frequencies that come in the form of these beings or other paranormal parasites.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. So people are, it's not the first time that I've heard that. Not that people have said I belong to Jesus Christ. You might, but she's that's what she told me. She said, and that had the effect of kicking his butt energetic. He just, that wasn't in alignment with his, I don't know, his vibration.
Sure, sure. Actually, I interviewed a guy from the UK that claimed to have uh, a bloodline with the reptilians too. So he gets visited by the reptilians, and he has like maybe a past life too with them. It was again a very weird claim, and I was never. It's my first person who would claim to have or be a reptilian or have some ties with reptilians. I was like, oh, and again, the UK. Huh? What's up with the UK with reptilians?
Yeah. Well, I think there are streams of energy everywhere, and it's just that, if the live stream suits the frequency, you end up in a certain country to be born to live that out, and what have you. So,
Mhm.
lots of funky stuff in the UK as anywhere else, I imagine. But it's interesting, all of that sort of stuff, because people have had these incredible, materializations and stuff. And I'll tell you another event that happened to me also in, no, this was in 2015. I think I'm right in saying that. I have to read my own book. I'm gonna show you it actually,
Yeah,
just
please do. Plug it
here we go.
in.
So this is, there we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, hang on. Let me just, so this one is just, it had the content missing, but actually, so vignettes of a life, and it says, I'll just read that. It says, an autobiography told in a series of short stories, a journey encompassing the surprising, miraculous, paranormal, weird, and downright bizarre, not to mention things extraterrestrial and UFOs. So that's that.
That's
And
cool.
yeah,
That's so awesome.
that was, yeah, that was just, I just put that together because there were so many disparate experiences that I'd had. And I just thought,
Where,
well, yeah,
where can people find that book? On Amazon or?
I'm afraid it's just on Amazon, folks.
Okay. Hmm.
It is an interesting read because when you get to the ooky spooky bit, there's quite a lot of the ooky spooky bit in there, which kind of manifests. And this is one of those events. So there was something that preceded this, but I wouldn't go into that because it's a bit convoluted. But so again, it's about. So this time I'm in my bedroom, and it's a fairly large room, and my bed's up against the window, area. It's not these days, but that's how the room was configured then. And I'd been working on my laptop, and I'd fallen asleep, and I suddenly woke up, thought, oh my God, must switch the laptop off. So I'd come from sleep and then woken up, so I was quite awake enough to I was just about to bend over the side of the bed where the plug sockets were to pull the plug out after I'd switched off, on the computer side. And as I was going to do that, my gaze fell onto the center of the room again.
Hmm.
It was just naturally, and there was like a sort of a mist beginning to coalesce there, and it was I suppose a bit like the cigarette smoke kind of color, that sort of whitish gray, and it wasn't
Oh,
very deep or anything, but it was strong enough for me to catch my attention. And as I was kind of, you almost kind of rub your eyes thinking, God, what was that? And then this guy was suddenly there. I call him Clive.
Clive.
I might have told you this story before on another show, but anyway, that you're hearing a lot sort of in sequence.
Yes, that's fine.
And so I called him Clive because he just looks like a Clive. So this guy, he's standing there with a bit of a smile on his face. Now he's about 12 foot away from me. I'm going, oh, there's a man in my room. It's like, what? And he does this open palmed wave like that, or like that,
Uh-huh.
smile, and says nothing. And he's standing there and he was wearing a shirt and like what we used to, I don't know if you call them a tank top, but it's like
Hmm.
a vest, a woolen vest, and looked like corduroy trousers, dark corduroy trousers. And I was like,
Was he good looking?
and then so I'm taking all this in, and again, my researcher brain, or pardon me, kicks in. There's no communication like
Right.
telepathy. There's no sound. There's no scent or smell, and there's no other sound, externally to him. And it's just the visual again, just the visual, and then the nice,
Little wave.
benign, hey, wave, uh, and then I just so he begins then to fade out, and I think, oh my God, and I finally do unplug my computer, so that's over down by the side of the bed, and as I'm down by the side of the bed, which has got a little alcove area, as I'm on my way up, I'm noticing a long arm with a kind of appendage on it, and it's kind of a bit like a crab claw. It probably wasn't a claw. It was maybe fingers that were like that, but from my perspective, they looked like oh no, I can't really show you like that.
Sure.
With the hand
Like a
compressed.
mitten.
Yeah. So I don't think it was a claw, but I got the feeling that it was a mantis.
Mm.
Would have been really tall. I mean, the ceilings are around me about 10 to 12 foot. I think it might be 12 foot. And I didn't dare somehow look up. I just was aware of as if there was a being right next to my bedside.
Wow.
And they, and they were again, there was no sound, no telepathy, no communication, just me observing it. And whether they were testing me to see, let's see what she does with this. Let's see if this freaks her out.
Sure.
um, it didn't freak me out, but I was just left wondering, oh, what the bejesus was that about?
Right.
What is the point of that? I'm quite a logical, analytical person, as well as being a creative, and I want to know the pragmatic part. What's that for? What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of that for me? What does
Sure.
it? I don't know. I've got no answer, I have to say. But listen, get this. This is right. If Clive wasn't weird enough, right? So I am fairly detail orientated, but not really on clothing and stuff like that. I don't take a lot of notice. But then the next day, I called a friend who lives about 250 miles away from me, northern England, and I was telling her about this event. And I called him Clive to her. She said, and I was describing his clothes. I said, I think it was from the 90s. I think he looked like he was from the 1960s. She said it
Hmm.
wasn't, it was the 1970s. I went, well, how do you know? She said, because he came here. I went, what?
Whoa.
What? So whether he just did his little wave to me and then beetled off 250 miles up north to go, oh, hi, her, I have no idea. But she described in absolute detail his.
Wow.
She said she described the collar, she described the colouring. I mean, I got the colouring off, generally speaking, and his face. I mean, I saw him so clearly, I'd recognize him in the street. I don't know if I
Wow.
would today, as the memories, from 2015, but hey, and and I mean, where she lived, she'd had a little bit of a ghosty thing going on, and she couldn't care less. She just says, I'm charging them rent if they don't give, pack it in, don't behave. And I said, well, did anything happen? She said, no, just appeared and disappeared. So, I mean, talk about I mean, I didn't feel I needed corroboration. I knew what I saw, and I don't care what anybody thinks that, tries to tell me I didn't. I know what I saw. And, I don't normally have men turning up in my bedroom unannounced on the astral or whatever plane,
That's to say.
wherever he was from. And but the fact is that she the moment I described him, she knew it. She didn't start the conversation saying, guess what? That was me. And then when it was about the clothing, when I said it was 1960s, and she's very good on genres of clothes and stuff like that,
Sure.
she said, no, it was 1970s. And then she went on to describe a bit more about the clothing, which detail I hadn't taken on board because I'm just, that's not my area of interest necessarily. But she was, oh wow, But I was right about the corduroys and the tank top, of course. But she could describe the stitching. That's how
Oh.
detailed she was on the.
So
Had
the
some.
fact that this thing knows that you're friends with her, right? And is visiting both of you?
I mean, she's never had any interest in this subject
Wow.
at all, and I think it was just because it's literally, as soon as I was on the phone, I went, oh, you never guess what? Oh, because I'm just, I'm just not. I keep saying this. I'm just not a person who has things happen to them, and then these things keep happening.
Just keep saying that.
So, but nothing terrible. I mean, the guy in the black shrink wrap guy. I
Hmm.
didn't like that. Well, I wasn't that fond of Clive just popping in unannounced. I would have liked him to have made an appointment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, I could definitely see where that first guy you're talking about wearing all black and skinny and just looking crazy and weird.
well,
And just
he just
like
looked
or
like
just the fact that it's another dude in your house physically. And you're like, what?
yes,
And you're scared enough where you play dead where
yeah, I did. I did my
yeah,
possum act. Yeah,
yeah.
oh possum, Yeah, I did. Because see, ET doesn't need to play those kind of games. They've got they can control us any way they've got very great abilities to, to wipe out memories, to do all kinds of things. They don't need to play those stupid games. So I don't know. I don't know what that was about, or but because my ex-colleague was so dismissive
Sure.
of the event, I thought, geez, not necessarily at the time, but afterwards, I thought it very strange. And I thought, could they have been involved in setting me up for something to try and discombobulate me, make me, unhinged? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not scared of that. I mean, if anything had happened to me, if I'd been hurt or whatever, then I would have, maybe screamed.
For
But
sure.
I'm pretty much a cool customer. I don't tend to panic much. It's just I tend to kind of observe and look and analyze first. Uh, of course, that could be a
Maybe do you think they find us more interesting that like maybe you are amplifying their existence and they find that maybe flattering or find that what they want to, or maybe even in the government. Like again, a military guy that you saw, that could be like the fact that we're making the world aware of this other world that other
yeah,
people are trying to keep secret,
as well. Yeah,
you
I
know?
think that there may be something to that, and interesting that it would, you know, that they would choose me as opposed to anybody else for it to happen. To knowing that I wouldn't be, I wouldn't. Well, maybe they were testing me to see if I, as I said before, would I freak out. Well, I didn't. I mean,
Right.
I was animated when I spoke to someone. I said, "You'll never guess." Oh my
Yeah,
God.
right.
I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't losing my marbles. It didn't, make me think that I need, to see the mental health nurse or
Sure, sure,
something.
sure.
No, I knew what I saw, and it didn't matter. Doesn't matter what people think that it's true for them or not. It was true for
No,
me.
I believe you. This world is crazy. This is Earth is the galaxy, or Earth is the Disneyland of the galaxy, is what I like
it,
to
it,
say.
it's just fascinating. It's just absolutely fascinating stuff. And I think, maybe you've got a point there. Just it's part of maybe showing the bigger world, because I would talk about it. They'd know that. They'd
Sure,
know I'd,
sure.
speak about it in the terms that I would, because you don't need to embellish anything, because it is what it is. I mean, nothing else came of that. But it's quite interesting. There was a guy I interviewed called Stuart Neal, who was injured, having, I think, succumbed to some kind of landmine injury, and he did some like a 2-year special forces kind of stint. I don't think it was actually special forces, but it was in that neck of the woods.
Hmm.
And when he heard my story, he said, "Joanne, I think what you saw was a glimmer man." And I said, "Well, what the heck's a glimmer man?" And he said, "Well, I was one." He said, "I did I think he said 2 years. I'll have to again probably look at his interview to see if it was 1 year or 2 years. But anyway, point being is that he and any others who were, instructed to, would go into private people's houses, civilians, and if they had been maybe like me, looking at certain things that the government didn't want you to look at, or I don't know, I don't really mean me. I don't think, anything that I do is any threat to anything, but, maybe somebody else who's maybe dealing with technology. I don't really know who. He didn't really specify the people, but he said we would be tasked with going into people's houses, taking information from their computers, or even taking their computers. And he said, and we had, now this was a long time ago, he said we had some technology that, and the reason that we're called Glimmerman is because sometimes people would get a glimpse of us, because he said we had cloaking material that we
Mm.
would use to shield ourselves. So in point of fact, we would appear invisible. So, and if anybody happened to see us, they would do, if there was alcohol around, they would stick alcohol down their throat. And so the poor
Yes.
person would wake up thinking they just had a strange dream and had too much to drink that they didn't remember drinking. But he said, and we were known as the Glimmer Men, and he wasn't the only one. There were lots of him doing this work in different rotations. But and
Funny
I've
that you
never
said
heard
that.
of the Glimmermen. I've never heard of the Glimmermen before.
No, it's funny you said that because I actually heard about another whistleblower that claimed the same story of like they would go and do these special missions to people's houses and act like aliens or just act like extraterrestrials and kind of terrorize them. Again, maybe
Right.
take information or just to get the Project Blue Beam maybe
Yeah,
practicing
I've
for, you
heard
know what I'm saying?
something of that myself as well. But this was specific. I don't know if it's specific to the UK or whether, this was something their intelligence had dreamed up. But also the fact is that they had this technology, a cloaking device like a
Right.
invisibility shield curtain.
That's
I
great.
don't know
That's
whether
fucking
it was a
crazy.
cloak or something that they actually did wear. I think it was something like that, the way he described it.
Mm-hmm.
But he said we were known as the Glimmermen. And
Hmm.
but I said, well, you know what? That's very interesting, but I don't think it was a glimmer man because I saw him perfectly. There was nothing invisible or slightly partially visible about him. He was wholly visible to me, and he
Sure.
was visible for quite a while. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know, it was a minute or two or whatever between him coming out of that portal, coming over to me, sussing me out, doing that electrical interaction, whatever that was about, and then him leaving through the kitchen and through the other door. I mean, I didn't hear footsteps. I
That's
didn't,
crazy.
feel, I'm not saying that there weren't. He might have been of a very light tread. Some people are.
Sure.
But it also may be indicative that this was some kind of technology which allowed them to manifest as near physical as possible. I don't really know how else to describe it, but maybe somebody else knows already something else of this kind of technology where and I 100% do not think this was ET or anything to do with it. Having said that, I would qualify it and say there's a possibility that it may be technology that ET had and was sharing with them, so the military could do their own kind of nefarious experiments because most of these kind of experiments aren't for the benefit of the person being perpetrated upon, are they? So
Yeah.
yeah, so it is very interesting. So I don't
Yeah.
think it was a glimmer man, and I'd never heard of a glimmer man,
No,
and
I never heard of it either.
Stewart, Neil himself, he although he was quite brain damaged, so he sounds like he's a bit drunk. I say that at the beginning, or show that at the beginning of the video. Please, be aware this guy is brain injured through service in the army, and his family had like 700 years going back in the military,
Oh,
and
wow.
all of a lot of the I think right back to his grandfather, I think that's as far as he could go back, had all had ET interaction,
Mm.
all of them, himself included. So
Shit.
fascinating stuff, but I still don't think it was a glimmer man. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. I mean, what do I know, right? So, I just had the experience.
Well, in your researcher. No, and well, a little off topic, but let's talk about your the collaboration you did with some of these contactees, abductees, people who are also in the music scene. And
Yeah.
so what idea was it? Your idea? Was it one of your partner's idea, or is this both
No,
that
so
you wanted to do this? Like this is like such a unique
yeah.
album, in my opinion. I was like, you're not gonna find this type of people, and it's not just one genre of music. It's all different genres
Mm,
of music. So that's what you're
yeah.
getting. You're getting a whole different a package of all different things. It's
So
awesome.
so what I'll just say, just as a precursor, is that I had written a long time ago a musical called Fifth Dimension, which is about a naughty alien, reptilian alien in this case. In fact, let me show you him.
Yeah,
His
please
name
do.
is Ariman. So I think I was showing him to you before, but so everybody else can have a little look at this majestic being. So this is
So cool.
Ari, and you can see how wicked he looks there. I don't know if you can really see his
Oh yeah.
gruesome face. And then
Yes.
as I bring him further back, you can see that he's quite bandaged. And the reason he's bandaged, he's a bit of a Mr. T. I based him on Mr. T, and I had him made at one of the London studios that work on Doctor Who and do lots of very high-end props. So it cost me a fortune, but it was worth doing because I wanted to show the most costumed characters. So I had two done. And Ariman, Ari for short, is bandaged because he is so horrible, so vile that his own body can't stand him and bits keep dropping off him. And the minions, which are the Greys, because he offered them better rates of pay, that sort of thing, to go with him. He's one of the fallen angels. Yeah, so he's half bandaged because he's his own body is having a hard time staying intact because of his horrible vibration and frequency. And
It's
meanwhile,
hilarious.
we have this guy, and I'll get back to the music album in a minute. But just
Yes.
for fun, this is Bertie, and I'm just going to take the
There you go.
there we go. I'm just taking the light right down, and I think you can see him better. He's a rather splendid, beautiful
Yes, he
maitre
is.
d'. He's like a butler, and he's actually based on a cricket, of course, you can probably tell, and very
Mhm.
useful to have four arms when you're doing waiting on. And he waits on to the high ups, and these are people like who from God down, really. So it could be himself, the man Jesus, and all the masters that work on the councils around the planets and the cosmos. And he is known as Bertie, but his full name is Albertus Genuflectus because he's got a genuflecting gene, and genuflecting means bowing. And you normally genuflect when you bow to, royalty. You see people curtsy and bow, and that's genuflecting. That's what's so a posh name for it. But yes, so the fact is that he's got a genuflecting gene, and he can't help it when he's in the presence of high ups. He suffers a rotten backache because of it. He automatically genuflects. He automatically bows. So he's constantly having backache and having to have a bit of lovely elixir liquor from, Aldebaran or somewhere he gets his booze from. I don't know.
That's funny.
Anyway, so although I'm not a musician, I love music, and this idea, Fifth Dimension, is in the wings, waiting to again get born at some point. But I've done a lot of work and written the story, and I've written the music, and two of the songs appear on Eklectia, the album. I'm just going to get the
Yeah,
album
please do.
image up. Let me just quickly do that. But basically, although as I said, I'm not a musician. I'm theatre orientated, and I love music. Generally speaking, it's absolutely fabulous, and I wanted to, and there were a lot of musicians who have had experiences.
Yeah.
And Grant Cameron, the Canadian researcher, had said he'd written a book called Tuned In, The Paranormal World of Music, about the time that I produced Eklectia, and I'd been speaking to him about that, and he put me in touch with people like Merrill Fankhauser, who's the father of surf rock. Hang on, folks, I'm just getting hold of this album and the album cover. Bear with me a moment. And the album cover has been created by an experiencer. It's amazing. So if I now, so I've got that up. I'm wondering how I can share a screen with this.
Just got to go to share in the bottom.
Yeah, let me get back to Zoom. Sorry, it went off. So let me get. Okay. Sorry, guys. I haven't done this for ages. Let me just do the share.
All right.
Just see if we can pick it up. There we go. And share.
There you go.
So he created the he used Sergeant Pepper as the theme, as you can see, and that's me with I used to have long dark hair, and I'm blonde by accident, but hey, I'm staying blonde. So.
I like it blonde.
It's staying. So hey ho, and this is Dan here. I don't know whether you can see my mouse.
Yep.
Dan Vallely, he created this, and here is Eklectia, the name, which really relates to the eclectic music that we've got on the album, because there's all kinds. And really, my dream began, I don't know. So this album was first published late 2018. And I guess I'd been thinking about it for a couple of years. I'd been having this thing, wouldn't it be great to get together a whole lot of people with their experiences and hear their music. And I'd also been working with Mike Smith, also known as Bill Brooks, and he was a musician. And going back to Grant Cameron, as he said at one point, all the people he'd spoken to, he began to think that every single musician had been taken because he said it was absolutely incredible. And then he contrasted that by saying, and he said, I went to give a talk with a golf club at some point, and he said, just because, he said, I asked them to raise their hands if anybody had ever had an UFO ET experience. He said, not one. He said,
Wow.
so it's that right brain, creative side that seems to be open to, to the experience. And those who are very super logical and not of a creative bent at all don't seem to have the the ability. And I must show you, if I can bear with me again, I'm going to show you. So it's a double album, and it features 19 folks, and we've got myself as one of two females, as Devara Thunderbeat from Sedona, that neck of the woods, and her work is amazing. And I'm just going to go find you. And Dan created the absolutely amazing artwork.
Cool.
And so these are CDs, right? And I know
Hmm.
that these days people are streaming and all the rest of that, but
We can find you on Spotify.
yeah, I'm going to show you one of the albums. So this is, I think they're such fun. They're
Yes.
just really brilliant. Bear with me whilst I get back to here's one of, this is album one. Let me just share that.
Yeah.
And you can see how funky that is. And there's two, but let me go back. I wanted to go back to one. Yeah, there we go. But that is amazing because
Oh, cool.
this says ETN001 on it, because I had intended to do volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, and indeed that may come to pass in the future. So Eklectia, this is disc 1, and as you saw, the other one is, you see the owl meme there,
Yeah.
and little fairy, and that spinning top there was part of Dan's experience. He said
Oh,
he'd been taken, and it was like he felt like he was going round like in a spinning top, like a child's spinning
yes.
top. And if you see there is Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
So I'll stop sharing that for the moment. But so I really, it was gathering speed in me. It was gathering energy in me, this idea. And
Yes.
I'm not in the field. So I don't know musicians. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in any field anymore, really. I mean, so I didn't have anybody to ask. And anyway, bit by bit, it coalesced. And then in 2000 and I think it was 18, in the beginning of the year, I had a call from a guy called Ian Degnin, and he was over in a place called Brighton, which is about an hour from me, where I am on the southeast coast of the UK. And he said, look, I'm really interested in your work. I'd love just to be a part of it and, volunteer and do some stuff. And I thought, oh God, how wonderful, because I'm a one-man band, one woman band. And more or less. And so I said, well, yeah. So anyway, we met for coffee, and then I didn't know at the time of the call, but then I found out he was a singer-songwriter, musician. I went,
That's funny.
oh, wow. I said, well, how would you feel about helping me make my dream come true and work on this album with me? Well, that's what we did.
Hmm.
And so the album was born. And Dougie Degnin was amazing. His song is fantastic, but I would love to play you
Yeah, please do.
so on the album, it's not only music. We've got sound bites from most of the people, like Steve Boucher, Dougie, and others, just giving a kernel of an insight into their experience and
That's
what it
great.
was like. So we've got the song, a bit of a soundbite, or the soundbite and the song, and then we've got me doing some I'm doing some interviews with just short ones with Grant to talk about the Chris Bledsoe story. And Chris Bledsoe is a very prominent experiencer in the US, and I'll tell you a little bit about that and how the Grant and the music comes together in a minute. Just remind me if I don't. And I thought this is amazing. So when it came together like this, and I spoke to Grant, he was working on his book, Tuned in the Paranormal World of Music, and he was telling me about Chris Bledsoe's experience. And it culminated, so there's more to it, and you can listen to Chris talk about it. But he said it culminated, this is me paraphrasing now, in having a visitation from an apparition. I don't know what else to call it. An apparition of the lady. He calls her the lady, also the guardian. And she was floating off the floor. This is in the dead of night or in the early hours on his property. And he's in North Carolina. And only he is out there. And he'd gone out because I think the dogs were making a noise, something like that. And anyway, so there is this lady. And she's, anyway, the upshot of their communication is also linking with Grant. And what Grant relates, and it's on the album, and I've even got Chris talking about it on the album, though Chris is the only bit of audio that is really bad, because it was like everything was stopping us on the day from recording.
Oh, weird.
I know, I put it on anyway because it was done on the day, and I thought, well, I can't do any more with it. But, you know, we hear the story. And the story was that Grant said that Chris had said to him, it's about music. Well, Grant isn't interested in music, doesn't play it. He said, people in my family are musical. I'm not. I don't listen to it, have no interest. He said, and Chris went on, he said, no, he said, you have to listen to Led Zeppelin's, oh gosh, which song is it? It's not Stairway to Heaven, it's another one. I'll think of it. But then there was, and so Grant's going, yeah, well, I'm not interested. You've got the wrong person. And then he said, and also Neil Young. And Grant goes, what? Neil Young? He said, what? Neil Young's one of these people? And like one of these people who's had some encounter, right? And Chris said, yes, that's what I'm told. And you need to listen to After the Gold Rush. He said, you have to listen to these songs. And so Grant was from a place called Manitoba. And he said, look, not even Canadians go to Manitoba.
Yeah.
He said, but there are one or two well-known musicians, and Neil Young grew up in Manitoba. But because it was that got his attention. So when he went and looked at the song, it was talking about the silver seeds and they shall come. And he said it was like that when the time was ready, the experiences, those, you know, contactees or whatever, would be taken up. This is like in the Neil Young song. So that got, sorry, my camera's gone again. So that got Grant very interested. And and then he was writing this book and introduced me to a book by Michael Lachman called Alien Rock, which is just jam-packed, quite a big book, jam-packed full of loads and loads of different very well-known musicians and bands' experiences of ET and UFOs and contact. So, you know, it's very interesting. And he sees his book as the second volume, if you like, because apparently Michael Lachman was going to write a volume 2, but he didn't survive life to do that. Anyway, so how interesting is that? And with Mike Smith and his story and him being a musician, we didn't get any of his songs on the album. The day we were going to record him specifically in Brighton, he was very poorly. I thought he was actually pulling a fast one and just got scared, you know, like stage fright. But he said no, he was very ill. So we never got to record his song. I have got his songs recorded, but it's not on the album. But anyway, so we've got some amazing people on the album.
Yeah.
And there's Dougie's and Mike Orum's sound bites that you might like to hear. They're like 1 or 2 minutes. So if you
Sure, please, yeah, please do.
give me 1 second to get them ready, because I think it's so jolly interesting. So
I'd love to hear it.
I'm going to play Dougie's soundbite first.
Okay.
Bear with me a second. Soundbite, there we go. So again, you'll just have to. So I'm not quite. Let me do this again. Let me just see if I can share it. There's nothing to share but except this page and hang on.
My name's Dustin. I'm a vocalist, songwriter. I write some electronic music. My first experience of anything not of this world, let's say, was when I was playing in the garden in 1964, when I was 5, and looking through the pear tree, light coming through the pear tree. Remember the blossom? And very, very difficult to put into words, but I was like wrapped in love and light, and all there was and ever will be in that moment was presented to me, and for want of a better word, the universe was explained down to its bits and bytes, nuts and bolts. And at that age it was quite a lot to take on board, but it felt in that moment it was happening, I knew everything, and I think I did. Unfortunately, I don't anymore, and it didn't last for very long, that I knew everything feeling, but it certainly did change my life, and part of that message was that I would be living through a time when we would have to make a choice whether to carry on with the illusion, which was another part of it. It showed me a massive illusion that we was involved in, or humanity had the chance to break free of the illusion and move on. And I think we're in that time.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
About the illusion, and that we were in a time, because of course we've had COVID, which I think was a massive scam. That's my opinion. Yeah. And it scammed most of the planet, of course, on purpose. And I think, although Dougie died sadly, unexpectedly, beginning of 2019, which is why the album has sort of sat on the shelf for so long, because it really took the wind out of my sails, because Dougie was going to do the next step with PR and all the rest of it, which didn't get done. But I am developing something which I'll come to, but I'd love to play you, if you'd like it, Mike Orum's soundbite, because it's
please.
2 Brits, right? Other people have done sound bites, but these 2 are the most, I think, potent and absolutely mind-boggling, just little vignettes of information that I think are just freaking amazing.
Cool. All right.
Here we go. This is Mike.
My earliest experience was back in 1955 at the age of 4.
Oh, I clicked that off, sorry.
All right.
My earliest experience was back in 1955 at the age of 4, when I told my mother that something of incredible importance was going to happen on this planet that would affect all units of consciousness, whether it be mineral, vegetable, animal or man. I told my mother that this would not happen in her lifetime. She did die some years ago now, but it would happen in mine. All these decades later, I now believe that what I was trying to say is that there is an energy coming into this solar system that would give people the opportunity to ascend to a higher frequency. After this, I started to see who I now call my space brother. His name is Telos, who visited me throughout my life. At one time, when I was walking along a country lane near where I lived some years ago, he appeared beside me. A portal opened up on the other side of the lane, and I was given the opportunity to go through this portal and go back home. I decided to stay as I wanted to continue making people aware of this change of frequency. He said if I stay, I will suffer intense pain until my passing. Since then, I have developed a degenerative neurological condition that leaves me in severe pain 24/7. Telosh only comes to visit when it is absolutely necessary to give me a message or otherwise.
Wow.
You know, that makes me goosey when when he says that as a 4-year-old, that he told his mother that, something of immense importance was going to happen on the planet and that he would see it, but she wouldn't.
Yes.
And I think he's in his early 70s now. And I think something may be happening in the next year or two that is
Yes.
amazing. And whether it's to do with Three Eye Atlas or not, I don't know. So we're giving people an awful lot of material here, but I thought that was nice to hear the people and their voice
Yes.
themselves from
Yes.
from the horse's mouth, as it were. So we've got these wonderful songs, and we've got bits and pieces of recordings from people like the forensic dowsing team, because they very much know about ET, and they've been finding ET in ancient archaeology as they've been working with using dowsing and using specific dowsing codes that have been given to them with the help of ET, I might say. So, the involvement with humanity is across a whole slew of experiences and interests and activities, which are very interesting. And I think that all of this, is helping us become more open. I don't know what you think, but I can
Yeah.
tell you something quite interesting related to, the kind of celestial bodies. And I'm talking about the Three Eye Atlas. And I know as we speak on the 29th of October, 2025, it's round the sun, so it's out of our vision. We're not
Right.
seeing it, as I'm aware. I haven't kept up to date in the last couple of days, but so these guys, they were known as the biolocation team because they used to work with their biology, i.e. the dowsing rods respond to the biological system, the paramagnetic and diamagnetic systems, which are magnetic systems of the body naturally occurring. And when you tune into it and use, a code or whatever in a location to find yes or no answers, then it responds. Anyway, these guys are very very scientific and science-based, and are scientists in their own right. One of them is a retired physicist. And in 2013, Comet Ison was around, and people may or may not remember that. But what these guys found was that Ison was being mined by other intelligences. I don't know if they knew, because I can't remember now. It was, as I say, 2013. I was around the team at that time because I went on lots of field trips with them and watched them do their work. And what they would do is to peg out on the land the holographic image of what they were tasking themselves with looking at. So, for example, when I first met the team, I call him the team leader. There was no specified leader, but he seemed to be the guiding force in the small group. It was Jeff Crockford, sadly no longer with us, but it's him and his colleague Nigel Hughes, who is still with us, who is on the album discussing and talking about the ET element of the dowsing findings. And not that they talk about Ison, but I'll tell you that now. But with Ison, there was one moment when it was on a trajectory, they thought, so the world thought and science was seeing, toward the sun. And their opinion about that was that it would just disintegrate and break up in the vicinity of the sun. That's not what happened. What happened was, guess what? The comet course corrected.
Oh.
Well, how, the thing is, these guys told me that before it was on the news. So I already had that information a day or two before the news came out saying, oh, something a bit strange about this comet. It seemed to have course corrected. And what these guys were seeing were two massive engines on the back of this comet. And they were mining, I mean, they knew what they were mining. They had codes to find out what it was. I couldn't tell you exactly what they were mining without going and looking up the information again. But they were mining minerals. They were mining, you know, like the Chinese on the moon. They want to, you know, they're mining helium-3.
Mhm.
So these comets are incredibly rich in all kinds of, you know, metals and elements which are powerfully useful to humanity. So they actually observed the engines fire up magnetically. I'm talking about in the magnetic field, and watched watched them course correct Ison because they were still mining it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I heard something about Three Eye Atlas course correcting. I thought, oh, aye,
Yeah, right.
what's going on there lately?
Well, the fact that it doesn't have a lot of characteristics of a regular comet, it doesn't have a tail, and it's like emitting its
It's
own
got a
light.
shield around it as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, something crazy about and
Yeah.
how big it is too, right? This is like holy
Size of Manhattan. So that's what, like 13 by about 5 miles, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not
Anyway,
bigger than
so you know, it's like watch this space and watch other celestial bodies, which, you know, cometary and otherwise. But these guys did a whole study, I mean, serious study, which they reported on. And they don't put a lot out, not these days, since Jeff's demise in 2020. They, you know, their work is much more, I guess, just between them. But we had a little reunion just last week, which was fantastic.
oh great.
And which was really interesting, and we're going to be in touch more in the spring, and perhaps share information more, which is really interesting. Well, I think it's a very interesting method of research, though
Yes.
it isn't given much credence by many. But if anybody wants to know more about how that stuff works, if they go look at my Dowsing Detective episodes on my YouTube channel. And shall I just bring that up so people can?
Yeah. We can end that on that note. We can plug in your YouTube and your website and where they could find this album of yours on Amazon and check out your website because your website is all updated now.
Yeah, so I've got two websites. So let me just go to,
Sure.
just so people can see what it
Yeah.
So there you go. So these are these three here are just tiny little vignettes that I did from some 2013 interviews and commentaries that I did with the guys. I just didn't want them to
Cool.
get lost, so I put them out. But this is, if you like, the latest major one. And there is Comet Ison. I mean, if you want to, we can have a quick look at
Cool.
that. 3
Yeah.
minutes. Let me just have a. So these guys were tracking it.
Okay.
They created something called the astroscope, which reads the magnetic fields. isn't it?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so Comet Riders,
Yeah.
fascinating.
Huh.
It's just a short piece there.
WordPress.com is professional WordPress hosting built with no limits, slowdowns,
Sorry
or
about
surprise
that.
fees. All
Oh, you're good.
$5 a month. Run any plugin.
Sorry about that. Never ever
No,
goes
that's cool.
wrong. But anyway, yes, so that's just a little bit about Iceland, and this is the ET. Oh, I think it's playing again. Let me get that off. This is the ET Newsroom. No, that's this is the. No, let me get to the other one. So this is the actual official etnewsroom.com website, and it just starts with "Are you an alien experiencer?" and there's loads of information. This is about the military abductions, my labs, and what is a contactee. Gives you some ideas there if you're not sure. Tells you about the history, what happened to the MASH project, and much more. In the tabs, there's loads. There's Eklectia as well. There's something about the album there. But in book 44, there's quite a lot about Mike Smith's story and the trailer there, which I won't go into. And this just gives you a lot about the different conferences and all the interviews and a lot of other stuff. So if people are interested, they can go and check that out. And maybe that brings us nicely to the Eklectia release website.
Yes.
So you can see the address at the top. I think you can, can't you? So
Yeah.
it's the etnewsroom.wixsite.com/Eklectia release. So I've just updated this, and this is what Doug got before he passed on in December. He got one of the local newspapers to do this fantastic, amazing piece. Alien abduction stories inspire album creation, which is wonderful. So you can go and have a look in the website on all kinds of different stuff. But I'd like to show you, if you can bear with me, because I think this is very interesting. So this is the gallery of the some of the pictures there. But this is what I wanted to show you. So this is Dan. Again, Dan Vallely, who did the artwork, the graphic design, which he's also a graphic designer as well as a musician. And he used to live locally to me, and we used to meet up for a coffee now and again. And when I popped by one morning, he said, "Look at this," and he showed me this incredible kind of scoop mark on his leg that had just appeared, obviously in the night that morning, and that's just him, showing with his trouser leg rolled up, a close up. But in 2010, so he told me that he'd got an implant, and I said, "Oh, it'd be great if you could get your scan," because he'd got some health issues, and he was just saying, "Yeah." He said they did a scan of my brain, and look, there's the implant up close.
Oh.
How amazing! Now Grant will tell you, which is true for the majority, that most implants are on the left-hand side, which would be over here. But this is, you can see on the scan here, this is the right side because they're photographing him from underneath. So this is the right and this is the left. And you can see here as we look, that's the right side, that's the right side. So on this unusual occasion, this is not on the left, as Grant has said on many occasions, and that will be true for many, but not on this occasion. Why that makes a difference, I'm not quite sure. You know, why they put it there, I'm not quite sure. But it's, you can see embedded deep in the brain. It's not a place you can easily get to remove it. So for those who haven't seen an implant, that's what it looks like. And Dr. Roger Lear, people may know of Dr. Roger Lear. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He
It does sound familiar, yeah.
2014. I met him. He was actually connecting with me when I'd started the Amash project to work with us, actually, which was wonderful. And I got to meet him in 2013, but he was already very poorly by then. And sadly, he died, you know, within about a year, 2014. I'm not sure the date. But anyway, so we didn't get to work with him, but we did get to work with a guy called Steve Colbert. Is it Colbert or Colburn? Not sure. I'd have to look again. Who's a scientist who had been working with Dr. Lear on the implants and had them tested, and was showing how, you know, how amazing it was that these implants at this time were showing frequencies of material that were, you know, not of Earth. I'll just say that. And people again look at my Amash in America interviews that are on my YouTube channel and also on the website, the etnewsroom.com, if you want to check those out.
I'm definitely gonna plug in these in and having people checking you out, because you're well worth it, because you have so much material and you go really in depth. And yeah, again, I'm so excited I got to have you back on my show. My God, it's been forever, it felt like.
No.
So,
Well, look, I didn't think that I would be talking about all of this stuff.
oh, sure.
Across so many, but this is just another of the images of us all. I'm taking the picture here, and this is Jeff here in the hat and Nigel behind him. They have written a couple of books, mainly focusing on the science, called Secret of the Stones, which is this one here. And then there's also the Phoenix Point, which I haven't shown here. But that's about 250,000 words, you know, 250,000 words on the science behind this forensic dowsing. And they get, you know, they all approach, and this is the physicist here, and they're approaching it. And this is a lady from Sweden, from Norway, Denmark, I think it was actually, who was doing a thesis, which she did finish. And I've got half, you know, one language, half in another. So that's never quite got out there. Get my head around getting it properly translated. But she was very interested in doing her thesis for her degree on the alien abductee and this kind of research. So fascinating stuff.
It
and
is.
There's Grant. And yeah, these are some of the people. There's Steve Boucher. And this is the album, as I say, that we launched, which was absolutely great. So I'll leave that for the minute. But just to come back to some of the stories, because I think that's where we were going to go.
Yeah.
Because all of these guys and girls have really astonishing stories about their, you know, their events and how they, you know, came to be abductees or contactees, that kind of thing. And hang on a minute, let me just get off here so we can get back. And I was going to share with you one or two of the stories of Steve Boucher. And I don't know how much time we've got left. What do you think? Because I've been talking forever now.
That's all right. Well, I'm gonna get some food here soon, 'cause I didn't eat anything yet. But again, we can do like a part 2, so we can do this.
We can. Why don't I finish then? Because I also need to get something to eat with one story about Steve Boucher and his band getting entirely abducted.
Oh man.
So Steve also tells his story on the 2 episodes of an interview I did with him. And again, you can see that on my YouTube channel and on the, I think it's on the Eklectia, not on the Eklectia website, on the ET Newsroom website. which was updated in 2023. So anything after that date is on my YouTube channel only at this point. So Steve was in a band called Harmony Grove, and I think we're talking about 1974 here. And sadly, he died earlier this year. So he would have been in his early 20s at this time. So there's about, in the van, they've come away from a gig and they're going home. It's in the late hours. They're in Ontario, Canada. They're driving up near Lake Ontario. And they were going to go on the major highway, but there was a road closure. So they took a back route and eventually got on a, slip road that way. But as they were going there, so there's the driver at the front and another one, and then Steve and another one in the back. And then they'd given a lift to a guy who was in the rear of the van with the instruments and stuff. So call him the hitchhiker. I mean, so that's just how he's recorded as being referenced. So the driver says to everybody, as the car slows down, Steve goes, well, what's going on? He said, I think you should have a look at this. And basically, there's a massive UFO hovering in the middle of the road. And they're all going, oh, my God. And anyway, long story short is it settles in the road and the car, the van, or the vehicle, is they're not able to drive it at all. It's like it's under the control of the UFO. So it stops, comes to a stop or a halt, and for some reason, the hitchhiker opens the back door, the doors. Now, Steve Boucher at this time has had loads of encounters, and he doesn't remember any of them at this point. He remembers a lot by through regression. He did a lot of work, had a lot of encounter stuff with Bud Hopkins, who wrote Missing Time, and his hypnotherapist lady, Aphrodite Clamar. So there are one or two memories that he's got naturally without that process, but this is one of those that he got through under hypnosis. And it was that when the doors opened, there were three greys standing there, and they said, obviously he's talking to them telepathically, we need 3 volunteers. There were about 6 of them. And Steve's like going, oh my God, because this to him, he doesn't remember anything. He just thinks this is very strange. Who are these? What's going on? As does everybody else. But and he's not engaging. He's looking down, keeping his eyes away from any possible engagement. So nobody says anything. So the grey chooses the drummer, I think the bass guitarist, and maybe the hitchhiker, and then one of them comes into the van, and as he does so, he knocks over one of the little snare drum, and there's a bit of a kerfuffle in consternation wise from the grey. He goes, oh, is this damage? Is this damage? And the guy who owns it said, oh no, it's all right. So once they know it's okay, they continue, and then they sort of approach Steve, and he's still trying not to look at them. He said, and you. Once they, it's almost like they willed Steve to look at them, and once he's engaged, they go. And he finds himself. They're instructed to walk in a line, one behind the other, not to look left or right, and to just go into the craft. And Steve, being Steve, he's a bit of a rebellious kind. He experiments. He looks left or right because they're beginning to move. And he said, we're not walking, we're kind of floating. And he said, and when I look left or right, we come to a halt. And when I look ahead again, off we go. Looks left again or whichever, and they stop again. He looks around like, do you mind?
Yeah, keep your eyes straight.
And anyway, so they're continuing in, and the Greys also instructed them not to touch the hull. Well, Steve, again, he can't help himself. He just brushes gently the hull with a bit of his finger. Which later, and he says it's just kind of warm to the touch, nothing, whatever. But he later developed some kind of big old wart in the application, which he takes as a consequence of him having not followed orders. So basically, so he's also got with him. He's got like like a canvas sack or bag with all, he's a woodwind player and he's got all his recorder types in there, you know, from the large to the small. He says, I'm not leaving them in the van. So he takes them. So he's got that. And they're asked to undress to their underwear, which they do all bar one. And the one guy says, well, I wasn't supposed to be here, so I'm not doing it. With that, the ET doesn't force it. That's very interesting on this occasion. He says, okay, we respect that, but will you at least wait whilst we work with the others? The guy says, okay, I can do that. So they all have whatever happens done to them, which are these, you know, experimentations. And one of them is where the guy, the ET guy, shines this instrument on his arm, and Steve says, it's amazing. He said, I could see all the detail of the inner workings of my arm. I could even see my pulse, but I could see the nerves, I could see the muscles. And, you know, so, I mean, how amazing is that? So I think in some place we have got that technology as well, because wouldn't that be helpful? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
Anyway, so they do what they do, and then Steve, he's sitting waiting for his turn at one point, and he thinks, what can I take that's a souvenir that will prove that I've been here? Because his mind is going 10 to the dozen, as you might imagine. He's got his faculties. He's aware of that. And where he's sitting, there's like a drawer, and he can see a little handle or knob to pull on it. And he thinks, oh, I wonder if that could come off. And he sort of tries unscrewing it, and it does come off. So it's only a little knob, but he takes it. And of course, he's only got his underwear. He's got nowhere to put it. So he's got it in his hand. And as his turn comes up, the alien says to him, what have you got? And so he goes, nothing. He said, you've got something. And so, Steve was shamed into showing him this. And Steve said, I just wanted something to. So anyway, there's a conversation with another ET, the two ETs together saying, well, he can't take it. And the other one says, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not going to, who cares? And the other one says, no, we've been told they can't take anything. So that's it. And they take it off him. But I mean, how interesting was that? Something unscrews on a UFO.
Yeah, right.
So he has his experience, right? Whatever that is, and you'll have to listen to the, because I know we're on little time now, so you'll have to listen to my interviews on that one, or read his book, which is called The Extraterrestrial Firewall. That's Steve's book, and he's coming down, and he asks one of the ETs if they would like to keep. So first of all, he shows the ET what he's got, this record in his bag, this burlap bag or whatever, and he quickly demonstrates it. Does the little tootle tootle, and he said then the ET did something very strange. The grey, he took it and put it up to his nose, and got some kind of sound out. He said it was then, later at some point I understood that the mouth was just a pocket, and actually there's an airway more at the nose area. And so he asked Steve, Steve asked him if he would like to keep it as a souvenir. So the guy goes, well, what's a souvenir? He said, oh, well, just like a memento, a keepsake, something to remember me by, something like that. So he said, well, yes, are you sure? And Steve said, yes. And then as Steve's walking away, he's beginning to think, oh gosh, I must get another one. I need to replace that one now. And the guy the ET comes back up to him and says, look, here, have it back. We don't. And Steve said, no, it's all right. He said, are you sure? Because I know you're concerned. He said, no, I can get another one. It's fine. So how amazing was that interaction?
Yeah.
And Steve had one more part of that where everybody was down. He said it was as if he was like the last one. It was as if they were all in some kind of frozen animation. And it was like Steve had one last bit of interaction, which he doesn't remember consciously at all, but he remembers seeing the ET standing in the doorway of the craft and him on the ground with his mates. And Steve said, my face was absolutely wet. And he said, I just felt this incredible outpouring of love from the ET to him. And he said, when I touched my face, it was wet with tears. And he said, I don't know what that was to do with. I mean, isn't that interesting? So
yeah, holy cow.
Absolutely fascinating. There's loads more about
Yes.
the story, and I prepared loads of notes about that. But thank you so much else.
For my audience, if you want to catch more of those stories, check out her shit.
But yeah, so Eklectia, I'll just leave with this. I'm looking at creating a huge, wonderfully exciting multimedia music festival over 2 days, hopefully the summer of 2026,
Whoa, cool.
featuring in the first half like 10 till 2 presentations from people and some of the amazing stories with film and hopefully holograms and who
Oh, cool.
amazing other technology we can get. And then then there'll be a 2 hour break for lunch, and then from two sort of from 4 till I don't know 6 or 6 till 11, however it works, we will do the music, and it
So
should be really,
cool.
and it's going to be also have a CE5 component, because John Martin,
Oh.
who played for Jimmy Carter, your president at one point, has been playing for them, and they've been leaving these beautiful heart-shaped clouds in
Mm.
appreciation. And he said, Joanne, you have to do this, and if you do it, they'll come.
Oh shit. You definitely got to do it.
So I'm going to do it before anybody else leaves
That
the
is so cool. That's such a great idea. That's so
school.
awesome, Joanna.
Yeah, watch this space for the 2026, and hopefully we'll do it in the UK and then transfer it over to America.
That'd be great.
Because
I'll be
we
down
have
to
to transfer it to Canada as well, because
yes.
it's an international album, compilation album featuring Americans, Canadians, and people from the UK.
That's amazing. That is so dope. Well, hey, again, Joanna, thank you again for joining me today. And again, it was just such a pleasure to see your beautiful face that I haven't seen in like 2 years.
I
And
know.
there was so much stuff to say and talk about today. I
I
can't
mean,
wait to
my
have you
God.
back on.
Well, thanks for that, Dustin. And it's nice, because you know what? I've only been just this last month or two putting together the framework for the show, this big show. So listen, guys, wherever you are, if there's any tech whiz kids out there, or anybody who knows anything about, putting on great big shows like this, which I think might work in a stadium. It's not meant to be a Glastonbury thing, because we still want it. We want to see the flyby, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll visit and come and land. Who knows? If
And to come party with you.
Yeah, that's right. Boogie on down with us. But yeah, if you are interested in contributing to this idea, I'm starting at the baseline, so we need to get it funded and do the whole thing. But when we do, it's going to be amazing, because it will be
Yes.
featuring not the stories and the music, and we'll be having people, I hope, like Grant, be out there and maybe MC it and be part of sharing his story, along with people, if not in person, like Chris Bledsoe, talking about the message is in the music. That is what the last thing I'm going to say to you is, that is what the lady, the Guardian, who appeared to Chris Bledsoe, who is this incredible contactee. Oh, I just saw an orb. Oh, how amazing.
Oh,
Wow,
sweet.
that happens a lot. Said to Grant, the message is in the music. So take that, folks, and yeah, put some great energy to the Eklectia Multimedia Music Extravaganza Festival, and for summer, get the vibes behind that. And if you're able to contribute in any way with some tech skills and or other, let me know.
Sweet. Well, thank you again, Joanna. And I can't
Thank
wait
you.
to have you back on. And yes, I'll let you know when this is up.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. I will
Yes.
do. And I'll put it up on, yeah, I'll put it up on my YouTube channel as well, if
Sweet.
that's okay with you
That's
as well.
totally cool with me.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dustin. It's
Yes. And you have a good rest of the night.
yeah, my voice is beginning to go now.
Well, get some rest.
Yeah. Well,
All
I'm
right.
hopefully going to have a jacket potato sometime soon. Whew.
Oh, nice.
All
Well, you have
right,
a good
guys.
night. All
Take
right.
care. Lots of
Bye
love.
bye.
Bye for now. Bye now for the UK.